Today's guest, Todd Kuhn, co-founded one of the first group reformer studios in Australia back in 2001, well before group reformer was ever even a category. He then went on to franchise a sister brand to 20 locations. He spent 2 decades on the studio floor and now has moved into manufacturing the equipment himself. So if you want to understand where this industry has been, where it's going, and how to build a studio that lasts, you're going to want to listen into this episode. Well, hi there, I'm Seran Glanfield. I'm a business and marketing strategist just for boutique fitness studio owners like you. If you're ready to be inspired and make a bigger impact, you're in the right place. All you need are a few key strategies, the right mindset, and some support along the way. Join me as I share the real-life insights that will help you grow a sustainable and profitable studio. This is the Pilates Business Podcast. Welcome back to the Pilates Business Podcast. I'm so glad you're here today, and I have got a very special guest on joining us. And I think we're going to be talking about so many really interesting perspectives and insights into what's been happening in the industry. We all know that Pilates is booming, the competition is intense, and likely the studio owners that will win long term are the ones who understand really what drives success in a boutique fitness studio business in the Pilates world. And Todd Kuhn is an industry veteran. He's been in and around boutique fitness, boutique Pilates studios for well over, we don't want to say how many years.
No, please don't.
But he pioneered the first group reformer studio in Australia. He is a co-founder of the Core Collab and creator of the Sculpt Former, which is now launching inside of the Sculpt Me Studios in Texas. And I wanted to bring on Todd. We had connected a few months ago. And I wanted to bring him on to share with us his perspective over the years of seeing what he's seen and perhaps even some insights on where he sees things going. Because I think these types of conversations with folks who've been in the industry for such a long time from this perspective of being a business owner, business builder, an entrepreneur is so incredibly fun to listen and hear about. So welcome, Todd. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. You opened one of the first group reformer studios in Australia.
Yes.
What was the industry like back then where you were? And how did that all come about? Because obviously that was a new concept back then.
Definitely. Yeah, well, interesting story. So we started actually running Pilates mat classes in halls, which really took off. Everyone was wanting to do just Pilates. It was like the 2001, everyone had seen what was happening in the US and they wanted a piece of the pie. So we ran a lot of classes in scout halls and community halls throughout our town. We had at one stage about 40 locations or 40 classes per week. Had other instructors teaching, but at that time there weren't really that many people actually teaching or that were trained correctly to be able to teach, especially in a group environment. And then we just had the idea that, or maybe we could do this similar concept, but in a reformer style studio where we had, or at that stage when we opened, we actually had 20 reformers straight up, and people thought we were just crazy. And we kind of thought we were a bit crazy as well, because everyone was saying this is a fad, it'll be gone in 2 years, you're crazy signing a lease. But we went ahead and got into it, and that's sort of kicked it off.
Kicked it off. So right back then there was really no playbook. It wasn't like anyone else was doing that, right? So you had to figure it all out on your own.
It's interesting. I think I look at this now and think about how the landscape's changed so much from, like, we were at that stage. One, there was a lot of education required of what Pilates was. We would have people calling the phone and saying, I want to do this Pilates or Pilates and any kind of variations of the name.
Yeah, pilots, yeah.
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 And we were doing like 40,000 letterbox drops of, brochures into people's mailboxes around our area every 2 weeks. And that was really that, and people driving by or people referring were the only means of getting people into the studio,
Yeah,
which was
because there was no Facebook or Instagram. There was
no.
did you have a website?
We had a website and it was average. Like there was no education. No one knew that, capture people's details. And it was literally like we were running little ads in the local newspaper and people were calling. And when we first started, people were calling that the message bank was full. And then we had no means to get back to people and you'd have to call them and it was on home phones most of the time. Crazy really to see how far we've come in 25 years.
Such a different world, truly, right? Such a different world. But, there must have been some lessons, and I'm guessing, given the trajectory of what then happened, that you learned early on and sort of perhaps habits that you learned early on that have served you well since then.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we always struggled with was that even like now there's coaches in different niches and getting the understanding from a tight niche where we were having a lot of the time, we were learning from people that were like big box gyms and that we were trying to get coaching from them and it wasn't really targeted and specific. So we were trying to then overlay things that big box gyms were using and then doing the same principles in a small boutique style, even though it was large format boutique style. And even languaging, the way that we would speak to people is different to the way a traditional gym speaks to people. But really main thing it got down to was community and service.
Yeah, absolutely. Fundamentals, right? The
Yeah.
fundamentals. And obviously that worked because you then went on to add a couple more locations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we did. We added 2 more locations in 4, 5, or 5, or no, probably took 6, 7 years actually to actually get it. The first one after the second location we opened only after a couple of years, but then the next one took about 5 years to get to that point.
Yeah, amazing. So then you kind of took a little bit of a change in direction. You went later on, you began much later, you opened another brand, right? And decided to move into a different business model. So you went into franchising those studios.
So that's interesting in itself. So the first studios that we had were more health clubs. The original name was Pilates, etc. Because we had Pilates, yoga, we had a little gym there, and we did group fitness. And then, but it was 6,000 or 6 to 8,000 square feet was the footprint.
Yeah,
and
it's huge.
It is huge, and the rent was just insane. And after in 2013, when we got the second brand, I was defiant on not spending a lot of money on the rent. At that stage, it was like minimum 200,000 per year rent. And I'm never doing that again. I'm never entering a 10-year lease. I'm not doing any of this. So I thought, okay, how could we do the same kind of thing on a smaller scale? So the first location of Rebalance was only 110 square meters, so like 1,200 square feet. It was like sardines in there. There was 10 reformers in one room, and we had this triangular room that we ran our yoga and bar classes from that really probably shouldn't have fit more than 10 people in, but would at times have 25 people in there.
Right.
That was started really just thinking, okay, well, if we have one location, this will be great. And then we actually had a really great business coach who was, again, he was from the fitness industry, but we were kind of we were implementing, or we were looking at the content that he was providing us and thinking, how can we tweak this for our market?
Mm-hmm.
And we went to a mastermind with him, and he said, what's your vision? And that was the first time that we had looked at it and thought, well, hang on, we've got an opportunity here to actually open multiple locations and have more impact on our target market.
Right. So then you went on, and that was when you started to think about the franchise model as the next step?
That was really the first time that because I had spent so much time wearing all of these hats, and I was teaching classes, trying to manage, do sales, everything in between. We did this little like a summary or like the mathematics of what tasks are you doing and what could you replace that for. And so the conference was actually in Hawaii, and we were sitting there, and my wife started writing it out, and she was like, "You're teaching 25 classes a week plus doing this, this, and this. Look at this. We can actually remove like 90% of your classes that you're teaching for." It was at that stage, it was like $450 or $500, and she was like, "This is crazy. Like, outsource that, and then we can actually focus on growing the business," which took us to the next step of actually going, okay, this is doable.
Yeah, right. Let's change gears a little bit. So you then went from running studios, franchising studios, to building the equipment. So
yes,
that's a whole different direction as well.
Well, the interesting thing about
Do you like wearing lots of hats?
Oh, probably no, I don't. But then I always seem to. The interesting thing with that is when we first opened in 2001, we had limited access to equipment. So we actually started building our own equipment there. And I think about it now, and it's quite hilarious. Like, my grandfather built the carriages of and in the first class that I taught, a man in the class pushed back, and my grandfather hadn't bolted the shoulder rest down properly, and the shoulder rest fell off, and he went straight through it. So like little funny stories like that I think back on, I'm like, wow, I've come so far. So we're always making the equipment, and it's always been my goal of looking at, like people buy into a franchise thinking that I'm going to sign up here and the brand is going to do all the work for me and I don't have to do anything. So I've always been about, with partners or franchisees, anyone, how can you get started for the lowest amount of money so you get the best return on investment? So we actually did equipment in 2001, and then in 2003, we were approached by in Australia, a large fitness supplier, and their goal was to start rolling out these group reformer studios. But again, in 2003, there was limited appetite. I think in total we sold about 300 units, but everyone just thought again, oh, this is just a fad, it'll pass. And then from there, we've just kept developing on the equipment side of things. And then we sold out of the studios and continued doing the equipment.
Yeah. And so you work now, that is your core business.
It is, yeah.
At Core Collab is studio equipment.
Yes.
And what is it that you kind of learned from being in the equipment world? Because it's quite a different world to the teaching world and the studio ownership world. It's a different ball game, right?
One thing that I've probably wearing too many hats always. I've always been the teacher and then the mechanic and the whatever. I laugh because I'm the least handy person in the world, but the only thing that I know is Pilates equipment. I can fix anything. I can see it and go, oh, yep, that's what that needs to be. But it's a interesting change. I like it because I'm dealing with people that are at that excitement phase where they're like, okay, I'm ready to get started, and I want to get started, and I want to buy this equipment, and listening to people's visions and listening to their dreams, that sort of excites me. So, and now I don't have to deal with the clients every day, and it's different. It's different.
It's different, yeah.
Yeah.
So you work with you manufacture studios all over the world, right? And you say you speak to studio owners who are typically at the early stages of their journey, or perhaps as they're about to expand and into a next phase of growth, as it were. So, you're having conversations about all sorts of different things. What do you see? Do you see a lot of the same conversations or concerns or mistakes that studio owners make often in those early years that you could share?
Yes, definitely. Oh, there's so many. Like, I hear so many people saying things to me that I was saying to myself 20 years ago or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago even, because everything changes so much. But one thing that I find And when I was talking to you previously, I said, is finding a mentor, like actually find someone that has done it and it can help you building the systems around running a studio, because it's a total different ball game. You might be the best instructor in the world, but the skills that you need to run a studio are totally different to the skills that you have as an instructor.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
yeah, that's so I'm very big on letting people know that, listen, it sounds great. You love teaching. I get that. But when you're wearing 5 hats in a day, you need to make sure that you've got the systems in place but the next step from that is, that's good to know that, but then it's how do they do it?
Right. And that's a lot of what we do inside of the program that I do with my studio owners is that, how do you do it and implement it? And then, I think as you know, from running your studios and from all the work that you do with studio owners, every studio is slightly different. Every studio owner has slightly different levels of expertise in different things and talents and natural tendencies to want to be in different parts of the business, right? Like some people would not want to do what you've done and would want to be client facing forever and ever and ever. And I think, so it's also about how do you apply it into your unique situation, which
Definitely.
is also a challenge, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So where do you find, what I should go back, given your sort of different hats that you have worn, and now having spoken, that you spend a lot of time speaking to newer studios, what is it that you wish someone had told you from the beginning about opening and expanding?
You've got to grow into the new skills. So you can't be set in, as I said, you can't be the best instructor. You need to grow with what roles that you need to take on, or you need to hire really well to support the team or yourself to work through that phase of growth. That would probably be the biggest one. I still struggle with that now, that trying to take on too many different roles, that it's impossible.
Yeah, you become the bottleneck, really.
Totally.
And how it's so frustrating to be in that position.
Definitely. Definitely.
It is, right? Yeah. I think there's sort of you have to sort of embrace that sort of letting go of some things and stepping into other things, and knowing that it's sort of, people always talk about, do the hard things or do the things that are least comfortable. But I think that one of the things that I've noticed, and tell me what you think, that about, those studio owners who seem to continue to grow and their businesses, are kind of go from strength to strength, is that they get more comfortable with like letting go and leaning into the harder things, and don't sort of shy away from the things that are hard.
Definitely. And again, I find that a lot of people go into it, the conversations that I have anyway, are great instructors, and they're thinking that that's going to be the linchpin for being an amazing studio. And sure, that works well for the first 12 weeks. But then after that, they're fatigued and everything else. When there's pressure on, they crack, which everyone will.
Right, exactly. And it's not to say that passion isn't important, because I think it is, right? Yeah. It's so important. But it's about sort of expanding that skill set, like you said.
Definitely.
Very important. Yeah.
Definitely.
So tell us a little bit about the equipment. Tell me about your sculpt former, and what you have been developing and working on the manufacturing side.
Obviously, as I said, the iterations that we've been through since 2001, we kept pretty much the same model till about 2010. And then from there, we've gone through so many different variations, trying to work out what was the best for our studios, where we had aluminum for some studios, and then we changed to wood for other studios, and colored wood and different colored upholstery. So we've kind of gone through the ringer of that, and it's just a constant refinement of, okay, well, this is the feedback that we're getting about this. Oh, okay, we need to change this. We need to improve this. But the sculpt former actually came about in 2015. What we were finding with clients is in one of our studios, or it was the first one of the second brand, and we were finding that people were coming on and they'd do, like, let's say, couch to 12 weeks, and they would get all of these amazing benefits in 12 weeks. And then they would start being like, oh, this is just getting a little bit like I feel like I need that next step. So we actually came to the US and saw some studios and what they were doing, and we're like, maybe what we could do with our wood reformer is we could change up our style a little bit so that we had more of the modern style of reformer. So we went back and we designed a wood version of what now is the Sculptformer, but it had a traditional foot bar on the front end and then handlebars on the back end and bigger carriage, wider carriage, more springs, 2 platforms. So kind of looked similar, but still looked like a traditional reformer. And the goal really was just to try to take people from the 12 weeks to keep them coming by giving them some more challenge standing work or more different, variations of planking and everything that really can be done on a traditional reformer, but it was also larger. So it looked a little bit more, strong, I guess, even though it was white and grey. Yeah, and that's really how the Sculptformer came about. And then from there we developed the training program that went with that, and then we spent 2018 through to or now we're still doing it, but we're doing we've been doing a lot of training in that method, like the Sculpt method, throughout Asia. So we've done Korea, Indonesia, China, Thailand. And that's kind of where we've been for the last few years. And then in 2022, we came here with just a couple of models. And then really in the last 24 months is when we launched the Sculptformer over here in its new version.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah.
And is it designed to be in a studio or is it a home use as well?
No, so at the moment, the Sculptformer, so we do all of the equipment range. So we do a lot of home reformers, which, a lot of people are. It's interesting. I sort of overlay my thought pattern, and I'm like, for me, when we've got a reformer at home, but I don't use it. I still go to a class. It's like,
Same.
So many people are looking for that option, and I understand that if you're driving 30 minutes or 40 minutes to go to a class, and then or you're not even able to get in because there's a wait list at the one studio in town or whatever. But so we've got a large home section, but then the Sculptformer is predominantly studios that are looking at what is the new wave. Is this the new wave? Is this, or is the industry going to do a full circle back to more traditional? I think that's just going to be both. Just keeps expanding and expanding.
I agree. And is that what you think, that is that sort of as you're seeing, because obviously you see data, you're seeing the numbers, you're seeing the interest. What is that where you're thinking it's going to head?
I think that one thing is that I think the Pilates principles, the old school Pilates principles are such good principles that can be overlaid into this modern contour
approach. Yeah.
Where recently there's been this huge uprise in the modern style, but then the training and the foundations haven't been laid. So I think that there's this great opportunity. I say this to everyone that are opening a studio in that style, is if you can get the really strong foundations of your traditional Pilates and then overlay the modern practice, then you're onto a winning formula.
Yeah. And I think, because we have this conversation a lot when I have guests on the show and generally when we're having these conversations with all sorts of folks in the industry at conferences, et cetera, it's like, well, what do you think? Is it going to all collapse and go away? This boom is going to end, and I think, as I'm it's interesting to hear your perspective. And I agree. I don't think we're going to see this drop off and disappearance of Pilates at all. But mostly because of the fact that you've been in this industry since 2001 and I've been in this industry since 2008, and we're all still here. And not only are we still here, we're seeing other people join. And it's sort of, there is, Pilates is something that is, everyone can do at every stage of life, right? And it's useful and helpful and great to do at every stage of life. And so from my perspective, we might see some people go into other trends that what have you. But I think for the most part, because your audience and your range of people who are interested and fall in love with Pilates today, right, in 2026, they're still going to want to do Pilates in
Exactly.
2030 and 2035. So
Exactly.
I'm really optimistic about the
Well,
continuation of the growth.
like I said, in 2001, everyone was saying the fad will be over in 2 years, and here we are 25 years later, and the industry just keeps it. It's an industry within itself now. It's not like, some subsection of the fitness industry. It's actually an industry, which is very cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so you're now going to do a full circle and come back to building again. And after everything you've built and everything you've done, you're now opening a new studio. Tell us a little about why now. But mostly I'm kind of curious about what you're doing differently versus the last couple of times that you've started a studio brand.
Yes. Yeah, good. That's a good question. So many things. I mean, I always say to everyone, you should be constantly learning about the best practices or whatever. This came about actually when we sold our business. The company that bought were a publicly listed company, and they gave the option for the franchisees to come across and be part of their brand or overarching brand, or go their separate ways. We had two of the franchisees went their separate ways and rebranded. Doing so much work over here in the last couple of years in the US, I've just been, everyone that I was speaking to was saying, oh, this place, they would tell me that a town, and it'd be like, oh, there's 100,000 people here. There's 2 studios in town. What do you think? And I'd be like, well, it's great. If you've got 2 studios in town and you've got a captive audience, if you do everything right, you should have a very successful business. So I actually was talking to one of the franchisee, the husband, and I said, oh, you guys, you ever think about selling and moving to the US? I know that he loves Dallas. And he sort of laughed, and then the next day he called me back and said, are you serious? And I said, I am serious. I'm half serious but half joking. And then he was like, well, if you're serious, let's have a deeper conversation about it. And then 6 months later, they had sold their business and moved over here. And then, so just, learning from, I'm big on the community, and the Paul and Nicole that we're working with, they were very good with their businesses, with their studios, at building that community. Because at the end of the day, you can be the best instructor in the world, but if you've got no people coming, or you've got a terrible personality that doesn't live the values that your company, promotes, then you're in big trouble anyway. So they're the perfect people for it. And just, I think it's interesting, even in the markets where, in the Australian market is so probably oversaturated, and everyone is actually kind of knows what they're doing, probably because it's so small. Whereas I've found in the US, there's huge opportunity because there's fewer people that really know what and how to do. So it's like, okay, well, let's give it a go. I don't want to be sitting in 20 years thinking, oh, we should have done that. That was a good opportunity. But same things really. Focusing on community, focusing on giving great classes, and the experience. As soon as people walk in the studio, being different to the studio that's 100 yards down the road.
Yeah, I think it's just critical. And there is a lot of competition in every possible way, for Pilates, but also for wellness dollars in general. So you cannot overlook that experience, and and having the skills to be able to know how to use that experience to stand out from the crowd and get you the clients and keep the clients, right?
Exactly. Keeping them coming back.
Keep them coming back, exactly. Well, thank you, Todd, so much for coming on and sharing your story and your journey and your insights. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I'm excited to see what happens next with your studio. I might have you come back and you can share a lot about, because I have a feeling this is not the end of that endeavor.
No, definitely not.
At all. So why don't you share really quickly where people can learn a little bit more about what you do and...
Yes. Well, you can find us at www.thecorecolabusa.com. And if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, come to sculptmetx.com.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Todd. It was great having you on, and we'll speak soon.
Will do.
For those of you listening, if you enjoyed what you heard and would like to support us, the best thing to do is to go and click wherever you're listening to this and click that follow or subscribe button. It would help to get this podcast out there into our amazing community, to all of those amazing studio owners and teachers who could use a little bit of support and encouragement on their journey in our industry. Did you love this episode and want more? Head to spring3.com and check out my free resources that will help you run a profitable and fulfilling studio business. And before you go, one last reminder, there is no one way to do what you do, only your way. So whatever it is that you want to do, create, or offer, you've got this. Thanks again for joining me today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.